Welcome to the Archetypal Mosaic. This is Mikhail Tank. This is a very special episode, part 2 of the Yma Sumac series. On the phone, I have the former personal assistant and confidant and webmaster for a website, which is Yma-Sumac.com, Damon Devine. Welcome to the show. Damon, let's set a lot of things straight. First of all, on your website, I just want to let people know the website again is Yma-Sumac.com. You can read her timeline, her official timeline. You can shop for official images and also get unreleased music. Those are some of the things available on your website. Can you talk a little bit about your website and how you came about building that in honor of her?
Yes, well, we've been friends for years, from 1997, and I did not know anything about the internet then, and I really didn't when I started it, but she started to go out again and be a little bit social professionally, which she'd not done so much the years that we were just friends. And so I thought I should make a website where people can have access to her, because she was sort of a mysterious character and impossible to get a hold of, at least from the general public. So I thought, well, I'll give them my address and they can send fan mail here or maybe get autographs or whatever. So that changed everything immediately, and I had no idea what I was doing technically at all. So I did it by trial and error, totally. And then I showed it to her, and she liked it, even though she didn't totally understand it at first. She looked at it, and then she said, okay, very nice, but you have to make copy for me. And so it started in late 2004 because we had some things to do professionally in early 2005.
Now...
it became the definitive one. That was not my intention. There was no competition with the other one people might know of or might not. It just happened. When you have access to her, naturally, that's going to become the more popular one. But that was not my original intention.
Well, your website has stood the test of time, and it's a beautiful website. Let me ask you this. So, Yma, she definitely signed many things for the website. She signed a couple of things for me, and she always did the comma between a year. So, like 2006 would be 2,006. How did she come about doing that? Because she's the only celebrity I know who did that.
It was so cute. It was just one of her cute quirks. She always told us she was right no matter what. And so she would say, well, if it's 2,000, naturally there's a comma. And then the rest, so she would say, see, the men don't think of these things. So that became sort of everybody noticed it, and it was just a cute thing.
Now let's talk about her languages and her octaves. A lot of people wonder, on David Letterman he said 5, but I believe it was more than 5. I mean, how many octaves would you say Yma Sumac had?
On a normal day or night, she had 4.5, and when she was feeling very well and energetic and rested and exercised vocally for a while, she would have 5.
Okay. Now, what about the languages that she spoke? She's an Incan princess, as mentioned on your website. She's the youngest of the children, and her mother's side was connected to the last Incan emperor. How many languages did she speak, and what were they?
Well, in real life, she spoke Spanish first, and then English. As her accent, her English accent, her Spanish accent when she was speaking English is very heavy, because although she did live here for 63 years in Los Angeles, she was touring the whole world constantly, so she never had time to totally master English the way somebody does. She was just 23 when she came here, but she never got it. When she would sing in English, sometimes it was very hard to understand what she was saying. But actually spoken, was Spanish and English, but she learned Russian and Italian, and she memorized the Quechua lyrics. And did I say Italian?
Yeah, you did. You did. Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that she sang in, and I assume she did it pretty well.
Now, when you say that she memorized Quechuan, was that not a natural language for her when she was born? Was it Spanish that they spoke in the family?
Right, I'm glad you asked that, because people like to argue with me, and they should never. Because I heard everything from her own mouth, and if she would love to brag, even though she was very humble in public, so she would have loved to have bragged about knowing that. Mm-hmm. But she said no. She did not speak the Quechua language, but she memorized it, that Vivanco, the composer husband, did know it and was proud of it. He was the one that was really pro-Peruvian, but he also knew it could be a good marketing tool because white Americans thought it was exotic. But so she learned the lyrics in Quechua, but she didn't understand most of what she was actually singing.
You know, when she went to Russia, I wasn't born, but my grandparents were amazed by her on the radio. I remember them telling me many years later. And I know that she was treated with exceptional respect, which she deserves to this day and for many centuries ahead. The question I have for you about the Russian time is she was there for a very long time, and that experience when she was so respected and dignified, what did that do for her? Aside from helping her with her taxes, like it says on your website, what did it do for her spirit, for her professionally?
That's a wonderful question that nobody's ever asked, and may not ever again. She knew she was a diva from the way people saying, "Oh, you're so beautiful and sing so great," etc. But Russia is when she was treated like actual royalty. And she was there for 6 months. It was supposed to be a 2-week engagement, and it ended up being 6 months because they just could not let her go. And she had a private jet to take her from place to place. And every night, massive audiences. She played the Tchaikovsky Opera House and many other places. If you've seen the video clips from it, some people are rushing the stage. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that she came home feeling much higher than before, and she expected that same level of respect for the rest of her life. And that would be good for her and then bad for her.
Yeah, it's hard to come down after something so grand and deserving.
Because this town doesn't do that for really anybody.
Right.
They're more interested in who's in right now. And when she came home, even in that short period of time, new things had come along and things had changed a little bit. She was a little bit surprised.
Let me ask you this. When she performed, especially as we know Chunsho, the Forest Creatures, which is some of the favorite, there's a music video for it, and she was just so spectacular. My question to you is, did she possess, or did the spirits of the Incan past come through her, along with the wildlife and the birds? I mean, she was almost like she was a force of nature, not only vocally, but spiritually. And how did she release and connect to such deep things?
That I couldn't really know. Only she would know, I guess. Once she got going, though, she really could, sort of invoke all of those things. But that I couldn't really know so much.
Damon, if you could choose, because sometimes there are virtual hologram shows, like some of them look okay, some don't. How would you feel if there was a future hologram show with Yma Sumac, like called The Forest Creatures or something?
If it was that song, or something beautiful that she loved, like Montana, or even some of the ones from my CDs, like Claire de Lune, which she loved, and Queen of the Night, Aria, I would be great with that. What would disappoint me is if it was that Takirari and Go for Mambo and Malombo. That is the only three that people seem to remember so far as I can see outside of Juncho, I guess. But young people seem to have liked, I guess, what you would call the camp element, which she would hate that word, and I'm not so thrilled about it myself, because I don't see her that way, and she didn't either. If it would be one of those three, I would be a little bit disappointed, and I think she would too. But I would love to see it otherwise. Seeing a young Yma Sumac and her beautiful wardrobe in the way you describe would be fascinating.
How did she feel about her movie experiences where she performed in the film with Charlton Heston and several other films? Did she enjoy being captured on 35mm in high quality?
She thought it was all right. She was really too busy for that. That's why her parts were never huge. A Secret of the Incas, which was all shot here, it was not shot in Peru or Machu Picchu. You can tell by looking at the stones and the plants that that's just crazy. She was okay with it, you know. I guess Charlton Heston flirted with her a little bit. That happened all the time. And then she sang Omar Khayyam as an Arabian princess, and sang beautiful song in English, and some other things. She didn't have much to say about movies. She did two in Mexico. Edith Piaf was in one of those same movies. And then the ones for Paramount, she didn't have a lot to say about it. I think she might have liked to have followed that, though, if time permitted it.
Now, her catalog, of course, includes the famous Capitol albums, as you've mentioned, some of which have never been out of print. And then it also includes the semi-rock album, which I didn't quite understand from the website. I have the original vinyl, I have both versions of the CD, but my question to you is, was that album shelved due to legal disputes, or did it actually have a promotional release?
It did have promotional release. Billboard, it was high on the Billboard chart for I think a week or so, even over Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Nice.
To my surprise, I didn't know that till recently when I found a Billboard magazine, and there it was. And Billboard also put a huge advertisement of her looking sort of Jesus-like, and it said Yma Sumac, the second coming, which is wonderful. And a promo flexi disc, they used to call it, a bright yellow. But unfortunately, she was very difficult by this time, and she hated the record cover. She posed for gorgeous pictures, which a lot of them are on her official Instagram, and she thought it would be one of those naturally. You know, her as the focus, like all of her albums. Instead, it was some strange drawing or painting, and she's way up in the corner of this little drawing, and the drawing is from one of those photo sessions, so that really annoyed her. So she caused problems with that, and then Les Baxter got credit on every single song, and she felt that she put as much into the song as he did. And so she was furious about that, and I have all of their letters back and forth, and they're pretty ugly. And he worked with her on Extubate her first, and I guess her last, which is interesting. And so they just got sick of all the legal battles and uproar, and they just took it off the shelves about a year later.
Do you think that significantly kind of ruined its possible mega success, or do you think that it helped create more of a cult following for the album?
Oh, the fact that it was taken off has everything to do with why it's always expensive and a cult following thing. Because at eBay it's slightly less now, maybe $60 or whatever, but for a while there it was just, a few hundred and what have you, till more people knew about it. It did have a later CD release, I think in 2011.
Yeah.
A bit of a sore subject because I contributed a lot to that and got zero credit on it. But they did a fine job on it.
Now tell me, since you have so many of the masters and rare recordings that you release through your website, are you planning to release an official CD vinyl of some bonus tracks or the best that's not been released or anything of that sort?
You mean from what's already out that
I mean, not only digitally, but like limited collector's edition, either disc or vinyl, just something for people to, relish in physically.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of people would love that. Now let's talk about, I have so many questions for you, and I also want you to speak your mind about her as well. Say whatever you feel comfortable with. Let's go to her personal life, which has been a difficult subject for her. This gentleman who helped brand her and was with her for a majority of her career, Vivanco, supposedly, from your website, it says that their supposed child was actually not her child, was the child of Miss Rivera, who was always by their side. Can you describe that experience for her? Basically, was there a love of her life? Was she ever happy with any man or anyone else? And did she actually ever have a real child, her own?
This is where the story gets very interesting and why there should be a movie or miniseries even, certainly a book or a documentary. I'm hoping for those two. She met, as soon as she went to Lima from the little village she'd come from, she was well off, by the way. She was not like some poor person that went to Lima to make it big. Her father was a politician, and they had fine money and a big farm. But so she went to Lima to study, and she was going to study. She got a scholarship. And Vivanco happened to be in an audience once when she was singing, a little something for some little festival or something, and he immediately saw that could bring him the level of fame that he apparently always wanted. She was about 18, not 13 or 14, as they're saying, all those crazy stories. And he just latched on to her for, decades. But she eventually married him, and that was her first romance, first anything. As far as physical intimacy, I don't really know. Sometimes I think perhaps she really was a sun virgin. But so she was with him, and then they had wild success in South America, but mostly in Brazil and Argentina, and then in Central America, Mexico. But she seemed to have known right away that he was looking at other women, because there's a poem she wrote quite early on, and it mentions having broken wings and no trust, and that he looked, at other women, etc. And Cholita Rivera was already around by that time. How she came to be was they traveled Bolivia, where Yma Sumac also did very well, and they took a liking to her, but the more I seem to know, Vivanco took a liking to her, so she was supposed to be the dancer. Then they became sort of a trio, not the way Yma Sumac thought it would be, but musically, and she was, good looking herself. I don't think quite like Yma Sumac, but people could argue that. So she went with him from 1944 for decades. So I would assume this is 5 years into this situation. Cholita they had moved to New York already to come here for fame. They had to start all over again, which must have been very difficult for Yma Sumac, who was such a huge diva already in South America. And so they lived in a house in New York, and Cholita, the dancer, comes up pregnant, being sick in the morning, stomach looking strange. Yma Sumac was not stupid. She figured that one out. And she hadn't been out of the house much, didn't know anybody. It was quite obvious. So, then there's a child there in February of 1949. They didn't want a huge scandal just when they were getting started, because Capitol Records by 1949 had already taken an interest, having seen them at a nightclub in New York. So they thought, oh my God, this is a disaster. I think Yma Sumac wanted to go home to her parents, who she loved very much. She was so hurt and devastated by the two people that she kept closest to her. They convinced her to stay. I guess when you live with somebody 24 hours a day, every day, they can talk you into just about anything. So over the period of 9 months, what it takes to have a child, they must have convinced her that this was going to be okay, and it was an unfortunate mistake, etc., but that she must say the child is hers to avoid scandal and people asking Cholita, where did this child come from? So she assumed the role of mother for the rest of her life. And that was that. If she forgave Cholita, there are pictures of them happy and laughing and the child is there, but there are personal letters where she speaks very ugly of her throughout all of those decades. I guess as a mother, in a strange way of thinking, she thought she should be near the child. But she was called Aunt Yola, and she was not the aunt at all.
Was it at any point what they now call a triple relationship? Or was it... basically, my question about Yma here is, was Yma ever happy and satisfied in terms of love? Or was she always living for her incredible talent?
She had no choice. The audiences adored her everywhere from the very beginning. She did not have to struggle horrible to get well-known or loved by the public. It was quite easy in South America and here once she got started. So that was something that she always had, the love of the people. They let her know she was gorgeous, that she was enormously talented, that they were interested in her. At home, it was very different. Vivanco, who sort of created this diva in a way, she was really her own thing, but he certainly put her out there, became jealous of that. I don't know if it's a male thing or he felt he started it and needed more recognition. I don't know. She always tried to give it to him. He's on some of those album covers, although in the background his name is big on some of them. She insisted on that. And I think that Cholita also became a little bit jealous that they liked Sumac better. Part of the contract when they came here with Capital, in handwriting, somebody important there wrote, in the end, we're really only interested in Yma Sumac. Yeah. So that must have upset the other two. So at home, they were not grateful for the tremendous money she brought in, and the fame that they got on some level. They were always on stage with her somewhere, albeit in the background. They conspired against her for many things, and eventually when the child got a little older, him too. He's still alive, so I have to be a little cautious with that. But he was a very spoiled, difficult child because he got no discipline because of how he came to be. So nobody gave him spankings or said, don't do this, this is wrong. So he grew up thinking he was perfect, could do no wrong, and whatever he wanted. So in the end then, at home, is Cholita, the husband, who obviously had cheated, and he would many more times from the horrible scandals. And then the child joined them. And strangely, I don't know if it's a biological thing or what, but he felt closer to Vivanco and Cholita, and even wrote in a letter, I hesitate to be telling this here, but when he was about 18, he wrote in a letter, I hope you understand. I'm sure you're mature enough to understand that I love Papa and Aunt Yola more. And imagine that. She was not mature enough to understand that, by the way. She was deeply hurt. So at home, it was pretty horrible. And on the stage, she'd go out with the lights on her and all the people hysterical and rushing the stage. It was totally different than what was happening at home.
Did she ever tell you, Damon, that perhaps after the Vivanco personal debacle with this family where she wasn't really appreciated, did she ever fall in love with somebody who actually loved her for her?
I wish deeply that she would have. That would have changed everything in her later life. But no, she was with him from 18, and she kept him in her life, but not as a husband, for almost 40 years.
Amazing. It's amazing to me her personality. She demanded correctly such respect, which she deserved from everyone for her tremendous abilities. But at the same time, she wasn't able to manifest the love that she wished for. It's an interesting thing that a lot of celebrities go through. It's a very strange thing.
Well, I had wished that she would have moved on. She was about 48 or so when he was finally out of her life. And I wish that she would have. Many men flirted with her for all of those decades, but she was loyal to him in that way that he certainly was not to her.
Let's talk.
You know, it's a strange thing.
Let's talk about some of her proudest moments. I want to ask you, what were some of her most, the things that she loved the most in terms of the records she released? And also I want to talk to you next about the 2006 trip back to Peru where she got the greatest honor of that country, the Order of the Sun. You went with her, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to discuss that trip. That must have been extraordinary. First of all, from her catalog, what were some of her most proudest moments?
Well, what's interesting is it was the things that I put out that she was most proud of, that she sang live, that Capitol Records would not record, such as Claire de Lune, Queen of the Night, and other things. So she was very proud of those things. In Moscow Nights, she loved to sing that at the end of a lot of concerts. But they wouldn't have that recorded. But a pride of her own work with Capitol, anyway, was Extra Bay and the Sun Virgin, Legend of the Sun Virgin. The rest she wasn't totally, overly excited about. Mambo, which everyone's totally insane over the last 10 years, and Think was her bestseller, just I guess because they assume that. She said to me in a rare moment of humility, I guess, she said, "Oh, darling, anyone can do that."
Oh.
Not like Yma Sumac, they couldn't, but she actually said anyone could do that. She was more proud of the operatic, beautiful things. So the first two albums.
Now, okay, I see. What about the Chuncho, the Forest Creatures? Was she proud of that? Because that's just extraordinary.
Yeah, and she sang that from 19... well, this is terrible, but I can't remember if it was from Extra Bay or Inca Takai, which there's 2 years between them.
Inca Takai, it comes from there, yeah.
Yeah, and she was proud of it. She sang that for years on TV and in concert. Yeah, she stopped that after the Russian tour. Everything changed after that Russian tour, I think.
The Jivaro album, the Jivaro tribe are the famous headhunters. At the time that she released the record, and in the background of the covers, there's the headhunter tribe. Did she ever actually go up to where that was or may have been in the past? Did she ever have any kind of, let's say, because in the linear notes from Capitol, I believe that there's some, I don't know if it's true or a legend that they went to visit that site. Did she discuss that? Is there confirmation about the Jivaro tribe?
Not by any stretch of the imagination. She was going through a hideous divorce. She was in Omar Khayyam. She put that record out. And I forgot what else was happening. There were many things happening that year. She wouldn't have had time or even the interest in that. That was Capitol's stuff that wrote on the back. However, many things they said about her in the very beginning, the Inca Princess, her association with animals, the animal kingdom, and many other things were true. That people think were myths, but they were true. However, the Jivaro thing, she did not go there, and I don't think she was very interested. I was surprised they thought that would be a hit at all, because it was very extreme for the time, and maybe even now.
I love that. I love that when she screams, Jivaro! Now, Order of the Sun trip, 2006. She received the greatest honor of the country, or at least one of them, the Order of the Sun. As you mentioned on your website, she was slightly going through a mild dementia. You were with her on the trip. How was that entire experience? I mean, was she treated like the ultimate goddess, the ultimate celebrity that Peru has ever had?
She was, so certainly. However, it was a little bit fleeting. Now, if you ask somebody else who's with us, I believe that you have, that person will see it completely and totally different than I do. That person did not know Spanish. I did at the time. I learned Spanish halfway through knowing her, and it brought us much closer. So I knew everything that was going on during this trip, and that person did not. That person, the atmosphere and Peruvian stuff, whatever, but I was watching what was happening with the actual woman and her interactions. Dementia was genetic in her family with women. The mother had it. All three of her sisters, who were all near 100 years old at the time, had it. She didn't understand theirs, which was interesting. She said, "Darling, what happened to them?" Where she had the same thing. It was an unusual situation. She should not have gone on that trip. I did not want her to go, and I said it, and her, I suppose, manager at the time really wanted to go and see through. It's one place he'd not been. So I thought, well, what the hell, if we're going to do this, then I'm going to have to make up her face so she arrives like Yma Sumac that they're used to seeing. So I must go as well. Plus, I felt I had to protect her. I didn't know what was going to be happening there. So we went, and everything was fine for about 5 days. We were there for 2 weeks. I began to notice she wasn't really enjoying so much, and I began to notice that every single place there was suddenly had an award for Yma Sumac, and I thought, all these places in Peru have these awards to give out? Sounds more like Hollywood, and it's certainly not Hollywood environment. And I began to think that they were making up some of them, or anything whimsically, which I didn't like that, and she didn't either, whimsically to attach her name to their institution. And it was an opportunistic thing, and I began to resent it, and she began to tire out. She was very strong physically and in every way, but still, she was still 84 years old. So she insisted on very high heels with no support with straps or anything. That was sort of her thing. Her ankles would be swollen. There were other elderly issues happening. Of course, the memory loss a little bit. So she would repeat her speeches 3 times in a row, and nothing was written down. It was off the top of her head. She'd forget that she just said these things and repeat them over and over. So at first the audience was in rapt attention, like, oh, the goddess, whatever. We have one famous person, oh my God. And then eventually you'd hear these snickers in the audience, and me being very protective by this time, because our relationship changed through the years. I would get very mad about that, but I would be mad also at how she was put in that position. So they'd be snickering instead of the respect they'd had just 30 minutes before, because they realized she's an old lady in the end of it all, like our mothers or our grandmothers. Yma Sumac did not want to be seen as anybody's mother, and certainly not their grandmother. She wanted to be a mysterious diva always. So this is unraveling before my eyes, and I was just very upset about it. Towards the end of it, we were sitting on her bed in the beautiful room we had there, not together, I had my own room, and she said, "Darling, I'm missing my home." And she meant
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. That's what she meant. So it was finally over. She was exhausted. I was exhausted. And of course, I'm many, many decades younger than her. And so I don't look back on that very fondly. She did get a huge award, as you say, the Order of the Sun. That was nice, prestigious. She looked beautiful, and that was real. And a few other ones were legitimate. But most of those constant certificates and plaques and all of that stuff, they probably made 24 hours before. She was overworked, horribly overworked for a woman of that age. Climbing Machu Picchu, as you might have seen on YouTube, going to Cusco, which is pretty much a giant tourist trap, and all of those endless shows. That takes makeup, high-heeled shoes. It was hot there. It was not what you see on YouTube at all.
Now, that particular order, the Order of the Sun, was that given to her by the president or somebody from the president's office? And when they said, when they introduced Yma Sumac and they gave this Order of the Sun, and they gave her the medal to wear, is this like basically the equal of an Oscar, the equal of a Kennedy honor? Is it one of those things? And did it give her a tremendous amount of self-worth, a feeling of, I achieved the most important thing in this country?
If she'd have got that here, she would have thought that. It's more like the Nobel Peace Prize or Person of the Year, or whatever, a Kennedy honor sort of thing. And I'm sure she was pleased about that, although the next day, did she remember it?
I see. And about her dementia, was it... go ahead, sorry.
So that was the thing. So it was more like that. And it was a young fan who told the Peruvian people who she was. Mm-hmm. Most of them even know. The rest of the world, yes. Peru, no. She was someone that their grandparents remembered vaguely, and the one who became an American citizen, then we didn't like her anymore. That's how she was remembered. So, that was that.
Would you like to get some water?
I think I would, yeah.
Okay, I'll wait.
But go ahead.
I'll wait a bit.
All right.
So we're talking to Damon Devine about the extraordinary Yma Sumac, and this is part 2 of the Yma Sumac series for the archetypal mosaic.
Yes, all right.
Let me ask you, her dementia...
Go ahead.
Pardon me. Her dementia, was it intermittent? Did it come in and out? Was she fully awake and available and clear sometimes, and then other times the dementia was there, or was it a constant dementia?
If you asked her a question, she could answer it and remember things from many years ago, just not a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. It would escalate throughout the years. I think she got it quite early. I think she got in her late 50s or early 60s. By the time I met her, there were certainly signs of it by a paranoia. But of course, now you know the story of her home life, all those decades. That's where the paranoia came from, I'm quite sure.
I agree with you.
She could do interviews and what have you, but she'd repeat things because she couldn't quite remember that she'd said them already. But it escalated as the years went on. She could be very harsh sometimes. So there was at least 10 months where I did leave because she hurt my feelings. When I came back from those 10 months, much had happened. All very negative stuff. So I wanted to sort of bring her back to, where she was before, and that was pretty successful.
Let me ask you this question. The Hollywood Forever, at one point she did a signing there, an autograph signing, and now she rests there peacefully. Is that accurate?
Yes. That was a fiasco too, though, that Hollywood signing.
Let me ask...
Some Vivanco relatives came in and arranged that without my knowledge, or her manager's knowledge, or her handler's knowledge, and I just happened to have called her because she didn't remember to tell me about it. So I rushed over, made her up, and it was a very weird, unusual day of hundreds and hundreds of people there for autographs, and she was not prepared, I was not prepared, but the people were prepared, and it turns out that Vivanco does not have relatives in California. So that's very scary. That's why dementia, you have to really watch over the person. They could be taken advantage of.
During that time, aside from this kind of unfortunate circumstance, because she was there previously and then she's laid to rest there, did she say anything about the location? Like, for example, she felt a spiritual connection to it, that she really liked it. Is there anything that kind of made you feel like she'd want to stay there for the rest of her, physical... I don't know how to even put it into words.
No, not towards the very, very end. Now, because the dementia had escalated extraordinarily after she went to the hospital. I don't know what medication they gave her, or it was after a certain operation. Once she had that, she was never the same again, ever, and reverted back to Spanish only, could not keep full conversations, etc. But she did have lucid moments, as you questioned me about. She did. And they asked her toward the end. She didn't really even know she was sick. So that made it easier, you know. The dementia thing at least kept her from that knowledge. And they asked her, do you want to go back to Peru? And she said no. And they said, do you want somebody from Peru to come here to be with you? She said no. And they said, do you want to have your resting place in Peru? And she said no. So I chose Hollywood forever, where the legends are. Valentino, by that time, Vampira was there. She was a friend of mine as well. And Judy Garland's there now. They moved her from New York there a few years ago. I thought that's where she belonged. She did live in Hollywood most all of her life. She did find fame here. She was happy here. I mean, you know, with her career, and I thought she should be here. Not in a grave in Peru where they would take a few pictures with her and then forget it.
Let me ask you this. So, in this country, she was marketed and branded eventually as the Queen of Exotica. In Russia, she was seen as an exquisite natural talent. So in Peru, as you mentioned, she was seen as somebody who came and left and may have, you know, disappointed them by not giving what people imagined for themselves, which really makes no sense. But my question to you is, everywhere is a reflection of the people that accept the talent. So here people saw her as an outsider who they saw as a strange oddity of a tremendous talent and beauty. And the amount of respect that she wanted and deserved. I've seen the video where she leaves the stage because somebody doesn't respect her at the moment. I mean, it all kind of matches and doesn't match in the sense that she very seldomly received the kind of respect that she really deserved for her tremendous talent, and other times she was seen as and treated as somebody who was kind of like a vocal freak or something extraordinary, but not clear, not branded clearly. How did that? Do you think that had a huge effect on her psyche, on her value of self as an artist, on being so underappreciated?
She didn't see it that way at all. No, she saw the crowds all over the world, and she did believe herself to be the greatest singer in the world, which she said many, many times behind closed doors. She would never say that on camera. She played Carnegie Hall. She played the Hollywood Bowl, sold that out all the way up to the sky, because that's a huge venue. Stadium, Louis Vuitton Stadium in New York, the Red Rocks in Colorado, that is just massive. So she saw it here. People don't know that now because they haven't seen the photos I've seen, the documents I've seen, and what have you. At the time, she was just massive with huge audiences. She even played the Deep South and sold it all out. If you can imagine the Deep South of Yma Sumac. So it wasn't quite like that. She was tremendously appreciated at the time. Okay. It was a little bit later when she came back from Russia, when so much changed, that they sort of saw her maybe as passé, and she realized certain things had changed, and she would have to make changes. She ditched the Peruvian stuff pretty much after the Russian tour. So no, she didn't see that at all, that people saw her as some oddity or whatever. In the later career, and that terrible German TV show where she walked off that you mentioned, I don't think she was appreciated by the handler as she, and I don't think that person knew her history at all. I mean, Carnegie Hall and all those huge places, the Coconut Grove, the Ambassador Hotel, you know, just wonderful, prestigious places. I don't think that he knew that. I think he thought, as you said, that she was sort of a camp oddity, and that he could maybe get something out of that, and give her a last hurrah, and it really shouldn't have been that way. She should have had a full orchestra and done a lot of the things she'd done before.
When she had a chance to meet the greats like Maria Callas and Marlene Dietrich and Edith Piaf and stuff, how was her? I mean, they were kind of mutual fans of each other, but how did she feel being on an equal level to the best in the whole world? Was that important to her?
In the beginning, she was just stunned by it. Because she was a child, of course, and Dietrich was doing the 1930s movies, and Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy, who she adored, and Grace Moore, somebody else she adored. She was just stunned that they knew who she was and were huge fans because she looked up to them, so that was a sweet thing. Later, she did feel on the same level and expected it. But she was always thrilled to meet people she admired. It could be Dionne Warwick or Doris Day or Peggy Lee, and she would be happy to meet them. Not starstruck at all, except for Dietrich. And was it important? It was absolutely important for her to be recognized by her peers, definitely.
How would it feel for you and perhaps her family if she was to finally get a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grammys?
That was brought up, and I think you had a lot to do with that. We never had a chance to talk, but I was made aware of that. And I thought that was wonderful. But by that time, she was a little too ill, and towards the end, I was very ferocious, as everyone will tell you, protective of her because I wanted her to keep, and she wanted to keep the mystery, the beauty, etc., until, she was no longer in the world. And I just felt that I really had to do that for her and protect her in that way. So I didn't want her to go on the Grammy show and be seen as frail or having dementia or whatever, and people would think how sad or what terrible person let her on the stage like that. And let me tell you, and I don't want to talk ugly here, but if somebody else would have been in charge of that, she would have been on that stage in an awful, disheveled state. I simply wouldn't let it happen, so I said no.
Got it.
This is not possible. And they said, we understand. And I said, I don't think she'll live too much longer. Unfortunately, naturally, you'll have her at the end of the show in memory. And the woman said, well, of course we would. My God, you didn't even have to mention it. Time came and went, and I was livid. They did not include her in the 2008 Grammy people who passed away, and I was livid about that.
Damon, how would you feel if she was to get that in the future? Without.
I would be very, very happy. Don't think I don't think about that, because I do. Okay. I would be very, very happy about that, and I would probably choke up because she would really have wanted that as well.
That's good. I'll do my best. I used to be a voting member for the Grammys for many years, not at this time, but I'll do my best, and then I'm sure there will be other people after me or along with me who will try to do it as well, because there's nobody like her. She's an extraordinary person, so she really deserves that. A few more questions as we begin to conclude the show. About her original family and the lineage to King Atahualpa. I'm not pronouncing it properly. Can you tell me a couple of things, including, did she have who was the closest person in her family that she confided in? Any of the other siblings, the brothers or sisters, the mom, the dad? And then also, did she ever discuss the lineage of the king, I can't pronounce his name properly, and how that kind of either gave her some kind of archetypal energy or any kind of historical value or anything like that?
She was, from what I can see from all of these hundreds of personal letters throughout 60 years, she saved everything. She was very close to the mother and father, very. The others, perhaps not so much. Maybe a few brothers she was kind of close to, but everybody else is pretty much asking for money all the time once she became famous. So she sort of distanced herself. That's how she ended up so much only with Ivanka and Sholita and the child, and that ended up being the worst decision she could make. But far as the Inca princess, she was the youngest, so I would assume she's the last. She didn't have any children, as we know. She didn't really discuss that so much, really, that part of things.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about her spirituality and maybe magical beliefs. Was Sumac, because I love witches, for example, did Sumac have any kind of spiritual beliefs, use of magic, anything of that sort? Religion?
No, she was a student of metaphysics. So that, in a way, I wouldn't really call that the occult. I guess some people might argue that. She believed in sort of a belief system mixed with a little bit of science, the afterlife and things like that. Metaphysics, as she said. She actually said that. And she had many books on it. So organized religion was not necessarily her thing. And she certainly did not pray to any sun god. She hated the sun, actually.
Okay. What about animals? Now, animals, were a huge inspiration to her. She also spent time helping animals during her time of self-reflection. How important was the animal kingdom and nature to her psychology and art?
It was everything to her. And she had a bizarre Snow White type of relationship with them that would freak me out. I was there to see this sometimes, but we went to the animal shelter once, and the Doberman Pinscher dogs were viciously barking because they were scared, and their front teeth were showing and their ears back, and she was going to put her hand through the chain link fence, and I said, "Oh, no, don't do that." She said, "Darling, please." And I said, "Don't do that." She was all, "Please." And so she puts her hand in there with a dog with his front teeth showing, and all of a sudden, and she looked at it eye to eye. And not necessarily imperiously, but sort of like, "Come on now." And that thing went quiet, was not showing its teeth, and its ears were all cutesy, and it was doing that little sweet noise they make when they're happy. And then another time in Machu Picchu, she was having an interview, and a little bird flew directly to her. It waited for her to acknowledge it. And it sang a weird little song to her, and she sang back a sort of a cuckoo sort of thing, but acknowledged it, and then it flew away. That was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. So she had a bizarre thing with them. Wild animals were attracted to her. She did not fear them at all. And domestic, of course, she always had those around. So she really did have that thing with the animals. It was very important to her, more important than people.
That says a lot. I mean, that shows that she's she's beyond this world. Her talent is supreme. Now, a few more questions. One of them is inspiration and temper. We just talked about inspiration, about being in nature and wildlife. But did anything else inspire her? And likewise, the other part of it is temper. How strong was her temper, and how did you get along with it?
Her inspiration, really, she claimed to not really have much outside of the wilderness and forest creatures. The opera naturally played some part there, obviously. She didn't feel in competition with them, really. She went to Italy during the opera craze with Maria Callas and everybody else and showed them she could certainly do that. She incorporated arias through her performances, for decades. Her temperament, I think she always had, even as a child. You could sort of see it in photos that she was a strong character. I think that she trusted when Vivanco came around. That was her first emotional, romantic experience, so she went under the spell, as we all do in the beginning. And she was so desperately hurt by all that he had done. There were sex scandals in newspapers all over the world from the things he did. He had a total of 4 children with other women during the time he was with her. So she was very defensive, later, very untrusting. Very. And that caused us a lot of problems in the beginning. So her temper could be very extreme and get her into trouble. After that German TV show, which unfortunately is on YouTube, I'm sure that she slapped the person who booked her on that show. it could be very bad. And it would hurt my feelings a lot when we first became friends. The spell that I was under did not last long because of that. But as the years went on, I began to understand how she became difficult, as they called her, why her temper was so extreme, why she was untrusting, defensive, and what have you, and always wanting to be in control, is because of things that had happened to her in the past with those people around her. So those of us that were dedicated and good to her, she did not really appreciate that unless you were with her for a very, very, very long time. Years.
Did she ever thank you? And likewise, what are you most grateful for knowing her?
For one, there's a thing, still. She never knew unconditional love at all. And I think it would have been a very sad thing to live such a long life and not know it. So I think that's where I came in. I did not see her as a music machine like so many other people, and saw the woman and all that she contributed to the world. So it was important to me that she not leave here without knowing unconditional love, at least from one person, one loyal person who would ferociously defend her and protect her. That was me. So at least she didn't leave the world without that. So if I accomplished anything, it was that then. I'm proud of that. For me, the same. She would protect me if she needed to, and I didn't have any family. She didn't either. So we bonded very close from that. So I'm grateful that I had somebody, to be close to me that was like family. I hadn't really known that before very much.
That's beautiful. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience or tell them that I haven't asked about? And please take your moment. Take some time.
I think with the opera community, she felt an outsider and felt they never took her seriously, and I agree with that because I'm still seeing it. As much as I try to push that part, they don't seem to be having it, except the opera diva lovers that sort of accepted her the last few years because of Instagram. I think that it was very important for her to be taken seriously as an artist. I don't think she quite liked some of the things she saw in the later years because the caliber of what she was booked for was not as she'd seen before. I think that was the most important thing for her to be taken seriously and appreciated.
And I certainly take her seriously and appreciate her. Everybody that I know that is understands true art feels similarly to that I know personally. And in my opinion, there's nobody like her. There will never be anybody like her. I mean, she's one of a kind, and the fact that you had the pleasure and the privilege and also the pain to spend so many years with her is a great testament to just the beauty of human relationships, and also what makes this interview so special. So I thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be able to share these things finally.
And audience, again, please go to Damon's official website for Yma Sumac, which is yma-sumac.com. And again, you can read her bio, purchase her unreleased music, and purchase some authorized photographs. Is there anything else about your website that you'd like to share with the audience?
The timeline. It's the most accurate timeline, period. What you see there is absolutely accurate. It's not like Wiki, which has a bunch of nonsense on it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Wikipedia either, believe me. Anybody can go there, do whatever they want, mix it up. Yeah, I'm glad that you have your own facts on there. That's very important. I'm not a fan of Wikipedia. Damon, thank you so much for being on the show. And again, audience, please visit the official website, purchase the beautiful music and photos, and let's keep Yma alive. Is it Yma Sumac? Am I pronouncing it properly?
That's right, Yma Sumac, yeah.
may we keep her energy and her art alive for the rest of time.
That she would like, especially.
Good. I would too. Thank you so much, Damon.